put your little
Well, I could do that, but then we had a number of people who were here yesterday, so I don't know that I want to reprise. Just went dark. All right. So in an effort to keep us on time, I'm going to start talking as people are getting their fruit and veggies and eating their pizza, and there's lots of food, so you should feel free to have it. Before we start, we already had a blessing for what we are sharing as food. We have a blessing that we say when we're about to study together. And again, just to remind you that the blessing has the same opening 10 words as most every blessing that we recite when we're about to do something, like lighting candles on Shabbat. So it's the same opening 10 words, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, which means, blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who sanctifies us or makes us holy or unique with commandments, with mitzvot, and commands us to, and then we fill in the blank, right? So it's got that opening staging, praising God and acknowledging how mitzvot, how commandments help us achieve holiness in our lives. And so the words that we add when we're about to study, 3 words, la'asok b'divrei Torah, to busy ourselves with the words of Torah. And actually, I'd like to, well, we'll say the blessing together and then we'll go back to the blessing. So again, if you know the blessing or feel like you want to follow along, you can do that. If you'd rather sit and listen as people are saying it and then say Amen at the end, that works too, because that's the catch-all, especially if people are not as familiar with this blessing or other blessings. You can always say Amen, and it means me too, or I believe this, or count me in with this blessing. So here we go. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. There you go. All right, good. So, I want to play with this blessing for a moment. This blessing that talks about commandments and the power that they have for us, and specifically engaging in the study of Torah. So this idea of mitzvot and the way that they have the power to bring holiness to our lives is something that oftentimes we take for granted. I think I've shared with you before that there's a teaching within Jewish tradition that we should say 100 blessings each day, which is a lot. But what it's really teaching us about is not so much that we should sit there with the, I don't know, maybe they'll make a Fitbit that has the adjustment not only for the steps that you're taking and the movement that you're doing, but also the blessings that you recite. Maybe that's a great app, right? Good. Okay, all right, so we'll get working on it. Yeah, so,
new committee.
There you go, I need somebody, right, a committee, right? We're a committee, right? We're computer programmers. So, but the idea is that there's an opportunity at least 100 times a day to say a blessing. That is, to take an ordinary moment and to elevate it to a sacred moment. Recognizing that God is involved, that relationships are involved, that love is involved, that there's an opportunity, even in the most ordinary of actions. And an action that we take for granted, like getting up in the morning and breathing. I mean, we take it for granted, but we know that we shouldn't take it for granted. And so taking these moments and pausing enough to recognize that there is the potential to connect with the sacred in that moment. And so that's why the blessing begins as it does. Baruch atah Adonai, blessed are you, God. Eloheinu melech haolam, our God, my God, right, who is in charge of everything, who is everywhere, and who has given us this opportunity through commandments, through this idea of learning from Torah and from Jewish teaching, giving us that opportunity to elevate the moment in which we find ourselves to a sacred moment. So I don't want us to overlook that. That's a very powerful idea. That in every action, every ordinary action, there's a possibility to elevate a potential. Right? Some people talk about this as mindful living, right? That it's being aware of what's happening in the moment, taking that breath, and not looking ahead and not rushing to the next thing, not rushing to make the next comment or respond to an email or a text, but to really be in that moment, to not be controlled by the cell phone, right? But to really be present in that moment. And a blessing gives us that separation, that opportunity to, okay, here we are. And let's take this moment and recognize how important it is, what we're doing, and celebrate it. And then the tag on this Lasok B'divrei Torah, to busy ourselves, to engage ourselves in the words of Torah. It's not just about studying. It's not just about learning. It's certainly not just about taking in information. But the word lasok, to busy yourself, to engage yourself, is to take the lesson, the idea of that moment. To take a lesson, whether it's from, literally from 5 books of Moses, Torah, or an instruction that is not coming directly from Torah. That we have the command, the obligation, the responsibility, or even the opportunity to take the lesson and make it come alive in our lives. I had the opportunity to officiate at a funeral today for a woman who was really quite remarkable. Raised, we had a wonderful family, a husband, 58 years together, 4 wonderful children, 10 plus 1 grandchildren. The plus 1 is one of the grandchildren got married, right? Great, and was a woman who really took charge and really was going to squeeze everything out of every moment that she possibly could. And I'm going to share one of the stories because it was shared also at the funeral, shared with me and shared at the funeral, and I think it's fantastic. Not that I think we should do it, but I think it's fantastic. She never really wanted to know, anybody to know how old she was, so I'm not going to say it, but she was into her 9th century. 9th decade. 9th century. Wow, that's really remarkable, right? So she decided, in just about probably 8 months ago, she was going to get a tattoo. Not that I'm suggesting that somebody should get a tattoo, but it was important for her. It was her. She was ill. She was feeling like she was losing control of her body and decisions and all of this. And she said, okay, I'm going to get a tattoo. And it was just emblematic of how she chose to live her life, to take advantage of every moment, every opportunity. Not that I'm saying you should get tattoos. I don't want you to come away saying, Rabbi said it, all right? So if you get to your 9th decade, do what you want. Right? And the tattoo was love, that iconic Robert Indiana sculpture from the 60s, the L-O-V-E, right? And that's what she had tattooed on her shoulder. So in each and every moment, we have this opportunity to celebrate that moment, to elevate it, to be present in it. And my hope and my prayer is that tonight we will be in the moment, that we won't be distracted by our cell phones and our computers and texts and pages and what we have to do later on, but we'll be able to really be present to engage with one another in the learning that we have to share with one another. Amen. Amen. There you go.
Okay, so this is bittersweet. It's our last session together, and I really enjoyed the whole program and really getting to know all of you. So it's a little bittersweet that this will be our last session, but not our last time together, as we have a dinner coming up too. So what we're going to do tonight, we're going to go through the presentations, and I'm really looking forward to learning from all of you. I know you've put a lot of hard work into it, and I have to say I'm thrilled and impressed with all of the, I mean, everyone has been so conscientious, and the people that could be here tonight have emailed me and sent me their stuff, and so I thank everyone for your very strong dedication throughout this whole process, and your commitment to it. It's just been really, really great and inspirational. So with that said, I think we're just going to go in order with groups 1 through 6. And again, I hope you've kept this to 10 minutes or less. I don't want to have to cut you off, but we do want to get through everything tonight, and we do have a program afterwards. So I guess you have Bob wanted to put on the tables, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. We were sick. Number 1, sit down. We're calling it audible. 1, sit down. We're going to go with 6 first. But first, Barb.
So on the table, I put down some cards about our Temple Jeremiah family tree. We're creating a Temple Jeremiah family tree as part of our initiative. Our advocacy initiative this year is immigration reform. So we decided we wanted to take a look at where we came from. So you have different opportunities. You can fill out the card on the back, and we will go ahead and put it into the computer for you. You can go to our website, which shows you on the front where you can fill it out, and then it puts a dot on a map, and you can immediately look and see where you and the rest of the families from Jeremiah came from. We also have a map, if you like the non-technology approach. We actually have a physical map in the hallway over there that you can put a dot up as to where your family came from. Then we're going to take this information and share it with the congregation of where we all came from. The other thing is a list of resources. If you want to know more about immigration reform, you can do 2 things. You can check out anything on this list, and this Sunday at 9:30 we're having an adult education program on immigration reform, where we have an immigration attorney who's going to come and explain to us the status of immigration in this country at this moment. So take a look at these. If you're able to
Thanks. Okay, so we're going to start with group 6 because they have something that they want to pass out first, and then we're going to go back to 1. So group 6, if you guys can come up here, because we're taping this for the people who aren't here. Also, I just want you to know that some of these ideas and topics are going to be at some point brought back to the board for discussion. So that's another reason why we're taping it, is so that they can actually, we have a record of what was said, so we can kind of document it. So it's all yours. And if you want to use the microphone, it's right here, depending on how loud you guys.
Our group is Group 6. Culture. So to start out our evening, we decided that, one of the easiest and ways that many of us grew up with is every time you come to temple, you bring tzedakah. So we were thinking every time that we start a meeting, a nice way to kind of change our culture and increase the culture of giving would be to start every meeting. Sunday school classes do it as well, I believe, with tzedakah. So I thought I would take this and pass it around. If you don't have anything to contribute or don't want to or can't afford it, that's perfectly fine. But it's the concept of that's how we began our meetings. I never got out of the car. For Sunday school when I was a child without a quarter. We always did it. So with that, you're going to start with that.
I'm going to step into the light because better for my hand. If you have nothing to give for tzedakah tonight, Group 6 will meet you by the bike racks. No pressure. That's what Jewish guilt goes along with. Our Group 6 has been charged with creating a culture of giving. Pun intended. Thank you very much. So our first issue is defining the problem. The dues for the temple and the tuition, it is felt by, I think, a majority of the members cover all the things that are needed to cover our budget. And that is not, in fact, true, that the dues and the tuition do not cover all the expenses required to run this temple. And I think our job and goal is to get this message out to as many members as possible. For example, for the religious and the Hebrew schools, the specific fees for religious school and Hebrew school account only for 50% of those expenses just for those programs. The remainder comes from membership fees. Interesting to know. The other issue that should be brought up is that many members are not able to pay their full dues and are on some sort of support. Many people know that. We know that because we've been asked to support through Families Helping Families. It's also, we know that the younger families are raising kids and putting them through school may not have the wherewithal to pay full, so there are some abilities to help out for them as well. Prior to 2008, the percent of families that were on some assistance was 8%. 8% of families before the 2008 economic crisis. Currently, 31% of families are on some sort of support. So that has increased almost by a factor of 4. We are identified and tasked as leaders of this temple community to kickstart our culture of giving. So that leads us into why we should give to Temple Jeremiah. There are obviously multiple reasons, and our task is to come up with reasons to provide some assistance to the temple because of what we get from the temple. We need to motivate our members for various reasons. We know that there are certain costs to being a member of an organization, and that the cost of organized Judaism is a real cost. We're not only trying to help our own community, but there are other Jewish communities that are looking for support as well. Chabad, JUF, numerous institutions. But I think we have to, as a culture within Temple Jeremiah, try to help assign a value that should be inherent, but is not always brought to fruition, and that's one of our goals. Support our institution. It's a responsibility of this group to sustain the temple for us, for our children, and for future generations.
So I'm going to talk my name is Jill. I'm going to talk for a moment about different ways that we are able to give your temple. Tzedakah, obviously, when you come in, we've got our beautiful tzedakah box in the lobby, which my children would never put money into because it was too pretty. So they would instead take their dollars to their classrooms to donate, or they do something, they buy bagels at the bagel bar, because that too is a donation. So basically, anytime you do anything at Temple, a piece of what you give for dinner or lunch or what have you goes toward charity. Some of those charities are within the temple and some are outside of the temple. If you go onto our website, you can see there are about 15 to 20 different ways or places to give within the temple. From the rabbis, each have the discretionary fund, as does Adam. But other people, there's the education, there's the prayer books, there's pretty much anything. One of the suggestions that I have is that it's very overwhelming, and Danny has said that if anybody calls the temple and wants to make a donation, if they don't know where they want to make it, it'll go into Families Helping Families. I would think that on the website, it needs to be easy. If I want to donate because somebody said they believe in a certain organization, I'm going to go to the website, it says make a donation, I click the amount, I put in my credit card, and I'm done. Temple Jeremiah, you have to pick one. And it's very hard, and it's kind of overwhelming. So one of our suggestions is that maybe we simplify, that you can make a donation to just the temple. Or if somebody calls and say, well, there are many options. Do you feel passionate about children or choir or education or what have you? So that's one of the things. We also have 4 large, bigger ways of giving. One is endowment, which we'll talk about. But it's kind of also fostering, we have our memorial wall. But we also have the leaves, wall of life, sorry. And that is for simchas, for a wedding or a birth or what have you. And it's just another way of making a donation. And you can also put commemorations into prayer books as well, and circles of giving, which have different levels and so on. It's overwhelming. to be perfect, in our opinion as we were talking. Kind of overwhelming in terms of what do you give, how much do you give, where does it go, and so on. Sorry. But we would like to, you know, and also an excellent way would be to have a match. So if there's a large donor to do a campaign, you know, they would match. Any organization says, oh, give today, if you give $50, it's really $100 because we've got a matching campaign. So if we can find those types of donors, that enhances everything. The last point I wanted to make is the tzedakah box, which is being passed around, is from the gift shop. An easy way, you know, the sisterhood runs the gift shop. Any profits that are made from the gift shop go right back to sisterhood, which gets put back into the temple. So pretty much everywhere you go in the temple, and I don't think people really think about that. So, thank you.
My name's Aline, and you ended with thank you. And that's what I'm going to talk about, is saying thank you. It's one of the first things we teach our children. We thank people when they open the door for us, ideally. We thank the person at Starbucks. Ideally, we say thank you. Talk a little louder. Can you hear me now? Okay. All right. Thank you. Ideally, we say thank you many times throughout our day, whether it's recognizing a blessing or again, something large, something small. When people contribute, we need to thank them. My contribution of $10 may mean as much to me as someone else's contribution of $1,000. We give when we are able and how we are able, but how we say thank you is so important. We know what it means to be thanked for things. It means somebody paid attention. Somebody cared that you thought about them or their organization. You know, and thank you letters need to be sent promptly. A very fast story. My son is getting married soon, and they received a very early wedding gift. And my future daughter-in-law said, but the thank you notes haven't come in yet. I can't write the thank you note. And she was being so proper. She wanted to wait until the right thank you notes came in, and it would have been some time. And of course, she wrote the thank you note early after she thought about it, but sometimes we wait. We wait because, oh, we may not have, you know, the 10 minutes, or because we don't have the right stationery, or because, you know, we have to go get a pen, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. We need to say thank you promptly, however it is that we do that. A good activity for the fundraising committee, you know, would be also to make thank you calls to members who have made a donation, write handwritten notes. Rabbi Cohn, I remember making a donation in honor of someone, and I think it was $18 to your discretionary fund at one point, and got a handwritten note back. And you know, there is something about that makes a difference. Continue to publish names monthly in the Covenant. The recent articles about those who have contributed in ways that may not be known to others have been very inspiring. Sometimes donors really appreciate seeing their names. And when we say thank you, sometimes we forget. We look at a list of those who may have contributed to an annual fund or something, and inevitably somebody's name sometimes gets left off. And those things happen. And one of the things that can really be helpful is to put a note at the bottom of a list and say, as much as we've tried to record everyone's name, we may have made an error. You know, please recognize that we thank you all, let us know, or some such thing. And I thank you all for listening to what I had to share.
I need my hands at first. I'm going to try and just hold it.
I need my hands to start, but if you can't hear me, just wave. So part of creating a culture of giving is, of course, the different funds and making people aware of what we're doing. I'll get it in a minute.
I know you are.
You know, there's so many things that go into creating this culture of giving. as we talked about, my group members talked about, letting people know the different ways they can support, how to support, making sure that people are recognized, appropriately in different ways. So a lot goes into that, what we think of as like an annual campaign, getting those donations to come in that day, and then they're going to go out, soon as things are needed. But there's also creating our endowment. So I know this group has heard a little bit, and at least knows that Temple Jeremiah has an endowment. But how many people know that Temple Jeremiah is involved in a special endowment building campaign called Create a Jewish Legacy? Okay, so we got a couple. Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to pass, and then I can move over. So we could take one and pass for those of you who haven't filled this out already. Don't worry, it's not a test. Just so you know what I'm talking about. Thank you. So Create a Jewish Legacy is as I said, a special endowment building program that Temple's actually been selected to participate in with 15, there's a total of 15 Jewish organizations. So the organizations we are selected with, our competitors, are listed on the form. So it's a program that's managed and organized by JUF, but it's funded by a local anonymous foundation, and the Grinspoon Foundation funds it nationally. Grinspoon might be a familiar name. They fund the Harold Grinspoon, Mr. Grinspoon and his family. They fund the PJ Library, if any of you get those books for your kids, and they do a lot of things with early childhood education. Well, Mr. Grinspoon, being the smart guy that he is, thought, I'm doing all this funding for early childhood education. This is not a direct quote, by the way. And we have these great Jewish institutions, and we're building young Jews. We need to make sure that these institutions are there for these kids. So he started this program that's been in a couple different cities, and currently it's Chicago's turn, where staff and lay leaders can go for technical assistance. They get materials to use, and the minimum goal is to secure 18 declarations of intent annually. If this goal is met, then the Temple and the other organizations receives a $10,000 general operating grant. So they're providing funding for now, and they're creating incentive for the future. So what is this declaration of intent? What is a legacy gift? It can be, people doing things in their wills, like a bequest, or designating a portion of your IRA at some point at your death, your spouse's death, or some point in the future, or your, a portion of your life insurance. And there's more complicated technical things that maybe Danny would know more about than I do, of things that also qualify for this. But this is, obtaining these forms, this declaration of intent, is a non-binding document, where someone says, I'm letting you know that I intend to leave a bequest in my will. And that those dollars, when it comes in, will be placed in Temple Jeremiah's endowment, which helps ensure that this vibrant community that we all know and love will be around for our kids. And you know what? And the grandkids and the great-grandkids. Because we're all here. My kid's growing up here. What if he lives in the North Shore and wants to raise his kids at Temple Jeremiah? Don't I want it to be as vibrant and amazing today in 50 years? Well, endowments are, legacy donors' way of securing that for the future. It's securing the future of our Jewish institutions, which is very important. So what you have in front of you, non-binding. Danny, did we reach our goal for year one?
We are about 4 short right now.
Okay.
We're close.
So, if we get 4 more declarations, I think the deadline's coming up, right?
End of April.
End of April. So by the end of April, from our membership, we need 4 more signed declaration of intents. And if we obtain those, then Temple Jeremiah will receive not only an endowment gift in the future, but they will also receive the $10,000 incentive grant that we can use for anything that we see fit. So it's really an incredible opportunity that I wanted to make you all aware of. Again, it's non-binding. At this point, it's a minimum of a $1,000 gift. You've already made an endowment gift to Temple. You can increase it, and that also counts for this. And it's non-binding, so it's not something that, if you're comfortable with, that a lawyer needs to approve on. We're not asking you to show us a copy of your changed will or anything crazy like that. It's just declaring your intent. So, I mean, how does this sound? Does anybody think they'd like to do this?
So when Jennifer when we talked about this, this was not entirely spontaneous. So when I found, although it was a little spontaneous to my husband, who I remembered to tell this morning, he said, "By the way," and he was fully on board. When I heard about the this opportunity for $10,000, I said, "We're on. We're in." We are very happy to bring that number to 3.
So thank you so much. Thank you for showing your leadership and supporting the Temple Blend. So I thank you on behalf of everyone for adding your name to the list. So just to wrap up from our group, and by the way, if you have any questions on the Declaration of Intent or you want to take it home, maybe this sounds good to you, and this is something you're interested in, you can take it home, think about it, and then be in touch with Danny. So just to wrap up from our group, it's once we start this culture of giving, which all of us being identified as the future leaders of this temple, and by being a part of this group, we're charged with doing that, getting it going and then sustaining it will be a challenge. It takes a lot of lay leadership and staff support to really create a culture of giving that makes it sustainable and really has, like an annual campaign drive. And we have this amazing, hardworking, dedicated staff here at Temple Jeremiah. And if we're going to really create a culture of giving and become, a fundraising institution, then we might want to consider having a fundraiser on board, at least maybe part-time at first. It's challenging to just add into someone's, amazing job responsibilities to coordinate lay leaders and staff members' solicitations and letters, and to really dedicate ourselves to doing it and adding this to our culture might be something for the board to consider. So, yeah, I think that wraps up group. Anything else? Does anybody have any questions on anything or any comments?
Not a question, but a comment. We, the members of the Leadership Development Program, would like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to participate in Tzedakah this evening.
Well, that is lovely.
And would like to present you with this full box.
Well, good job, everybody.
We will count it after our table contributes and announce how many we raised this evening.
Thank you guys, that was really wonderful. So we're going to go back and start with membership group 1. Where's group 1? Okay. Group 1, membership.
Hi, I'm Lisa. Our group is recruiting and retaining membership. From our research and talking to friends and people at other temples and as far as recruiting, we do what just about everyone else does. We put ads in papers, we invite the public to our events and our services, we get people through word of mouth, and we offer special reduced dues for young families and singles. So we do what everyone else does, and we kind of chose to focus more on the retaining part because we do get about 60 to 75 new families a year. So our concern was more in the retaining the members that we have rather than trying to go out and continue to get new members. And as far as retaining members, this, as I'm sure is not going to be a surprise to anyone, is not something that just our temple is dealing with. Everybody from any temple or synagogue that we've spoken to has the same issues as far as trying to keep their members active and staying involved pretty much, longer term. And many of the reasons that people leave seem to be when their youngest child becomes a bar or bat mitzvah. They feel if they're not already connected or don't, feel that they need to belong to a temple anymore. And that's one of the main times that people leave. Another time is sometimes if there's a change in marital status. If they become divorced, if they have, if their spouse passes away, that they may choose to leave at that time because they just don't feel comfortable anymore. And sometimes when families become empty nesters, that's another time through our research that we've found that people tend to leave their temple or synagogue. One big thing that we did learn through our research is that our group is called Retaining and Recruiting Members. One of the main things that we need to focus on is integrating those members. So it's not just recruiting them and retaining them, there's a step in the middle, and that's integrating them. And once they're integrated, it's much easier to retain them. So we focused on retaining our members through integrating them. And I'm going to let Dawn talk about ideas to integrate our members.
Really, we came up with what we thought was our best idea on really integrating new families that do arrive. And we thought that maybe a program that could be in the temple was where a family would be connected with another family, like a sponsor or an ambassador family. And you would pair the family with the other family because of interests, family makeup, location, or something like that. And then the two families would connect in a way, and it would be a program where the sponsor family would really have to go about this for anywhere from 12 to 18 months. And then what they would do is they would invite them to do things like go to the Purim adults only party, and they could even say if they're from the same location, we can drive in together and things like that. And that was an idea to get the family connected. So it's the asking people to events, the asking them. And that would maybe get them connected, adult families with other adults, and then maybe the children later on. But it would be a commitment for the sponsor family. And the other idea we had talked about is to get the families and their members involved is, the way that we're all here is because someone actually called you and asked you to come. So a personal asking usually doesn't result in a no, otherwise that's why we're here. So it's really this sponsor family would do these personal asks, and then the other thing would be to get younger children involved of families would be the kids who are involved in Jetty who are active. They would also have to somewhat, recruit a little bit in their Sunday school classes, confirmation class, things like that, where you've got people going, but they're not really doing the Jetty events or the junior Jetty. So there are board members in those groups who could actually move people forward. So that was our ideas in integrating so we wouldn't lose the families.
Thank you, Dawn. I'm Marcia Osher. And really to springboard on this point of integrating, when we all talked amongst ourselves about why we're here and come here more often, it was because of a couple pivotal things that happened in my experience here at Temple Jeremiah. A phone call from Rabbi. Marcia, would you please come into my office? And when I arrived, he said, I would really like to invite you and Albert Berkeley to be in charge of Family Promise. I think you would be fabulous in this position. You've demonstrated these certain skills. And we spoke for a while. And when I left, Albert and I looked at each other and I said, I feel so honored that he called me in and he spoke to me personally. And therefore, Albert and I have been in charge of Family Promise now for about 3 years. Abby Lasky called me a couple of years ago, and she was in charge of the benefit, and said, Marcia, please get involved with this. I know that you have a certain skill here. It won't be too time consuming, but just please, it'll be a lot of fun. And I'm going to tell you, I met some of the most fabulous women on that committee, and those two events and activities have rooted me. And now I can walk into a room like this, and I see familiar faces. That is the integrating part. Once you're on a committee and you start meeting people, then when you come in on Friday nights or you come to any activity, you at least see a couple familiar faces that get you over the hump. And that is really, really critical. So we came up with some ideas on things to try. And one thing is, people love to be personally asked. It's just, it speaks to our heart and it makes us feel special. Asking new members to do an aliyah. Go up on the bima on a Friday night or a high holiday and say, we would love you to come up with some of the new members. Maybe we could do the family, the host family with the new family that has sort of ushered them in for the year together up there. And I really want to elaborate on Dawn's idea with this host family. Having a family like myself, being paired with another family that's brand new, we would have them over to our house for dinner. We'd have kids the same age, we'd have kids that go to New Trier together, we would pair them specifically, and they would get to know Jerry and Marcia. So then we would invite them to the Purim Carnival, and we would go, and they would be with us so that they feel comfortable. And for a year, we would reach out to them at least 4 times to bring them into a Friday night service so they're with us, and then you feel safe because you're with someone you know. So that's really, I think, a fabulous idea that I think Dawn came up with. The age group that we're really losing, we find with our events here, is the 30 to 40-year-old group. You just don't see many of them, I have to be honest, at events. And so we're trying to come up with some ideas. One was like sangria in the sukkah. I heard at another temple, people had a blast, loved that. The other one was maybe just having a happy hour at a Pinstripes, you know, away from the temple, getting people gathered around after work on a Friday. There's going to be a group of people meeting at Pinstripes, and I don't mean to always wrap it around alcohol, but that will attract maybe some of the younger people. Another thing is the students. I'm on the education committee, and I think that we should have some students on our education committee. I think they will have valuable input, and I think they would be incredibly honored to be able to sit at a table with adults, and we would be listening to their input. So getting the kids integrated. So anyway, I think that that's kind of the key thing. We do a great job of recruiting here. I think we got a lot of families coming in, and then they fall off in the end. I think what we can really change is our integrating and doing more phone calls and asking people. Mitch, I'd love to see you on this committee. You're a talented man. You have this skill, and you would be fabulous in this arena.
Sign me up, Marcia. Particularly when you said happy hour.
You can run the sangria and the sukkah. So anyway, that's those are the ideas we came up with. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
That was really great, guys. Thank you. And this group 2 is also membership, right? Engagement and connection.
Hopefully the music works. Get this thing moving a little faster.
You didn't tell me about music.
Oh, there's no music? Oh, all right. It's a different presentation. Good evening. So I'm Dan Malmed. I'm joined with Dan Schwartz and Judy Craven and Jennifer Reback. It's nice to be here. We have been given what I think is probably one of the most important topics, because the rest of your topics are not that important. So I just want to get that out there. Without engagement and connection, we're in trouble. I mean, that's the bottom line. This is just a building. Without any of that, this is just a place. And, you know, like a house and a home. I think with a home, you have engagement and connection. So tonight, we're going to talk, probably quickly, about, you know, how do we do a better job of making long-lasting connections? And there's a lot of overlap with the last group, which is good, because I think these are concepts that are really crucial. Now that we have people, you know, what are we going to do to encourage membership? And, you know, the teaming and the partnering and all that stuff is definitely things we're going to talk about as well. And then the retention. Retention is crucial. You know, I'm a new guy, and I think we just hit our year mark almost. But, you know, to hear about people coming in the door and leaving just quickly like that, I think that's, you know, once they get through a cycle and they leave, I think that's something we all have to work on while we're here. So I will pass now. Yeah.
Okay, hi, I'm Jennifer Beback. I'm going to speak more to what the previous group was speaking about. I think really a lot of what I have to say has to go with the integration piece of how to finding out what members need, what's going to help them be given the opportunity to be integrated, and hopefully, in the end, that retention piece. So we had discussed that we need to identify the individual family needs and desires, whether they be educational, which obviously is usually, I think, are often a starting point for a majority of members, or whether it be educational, social, a place of belonging, a place to do the giving back, all of the volunteering and raising the money and feeding the homeless, whatever your sort of need, what you're looking for may be. And with that, deciding that connection, what's going to make them feel connected, and find the members within the synagogue that, you know, for all these ways we're talking about reaching out, find the right person to reach out to whatever we've identified to be that family's need. And like we said, the problem is it's different for every person. It's hard to tease that for every family, every person. It depends what the family makeup is, you know, based on, is it an age issue? Do they have kids or no kids? Are they single or married? Divorced or widowed? And obviously, again, different needs for different people. And I know there's already avenues in place to reach out to those people and for members to reach out, so just identifying that. Identify what we can offer people both inside and outside the synagogue. So we did a lot of talking about really outside the synagogue. And so the previous group was discussing having, being matched up with a family. We discussed like Shabbat dinners at members' homes. I mean, I'm sure there's a large, not a majority, but a large amount of families who already do Shabbat. You know, we do Shabbat dinner most Friday nights, and we love to have whoever wants to come. So, you know, those people may be willing. You know, there can be families who know nobody, and that's a great place to start. But I know that's a big ask of people. Okay, just let me know how many people. Or like you were saying, the previous group again about pinstripes, we were talking about just dinners out, you know, not necessarily at the temple, a little maybe less intimidating where you're just going out with a family you've sort of been set up with, but it's not at the synagogue, and or we talked about families where you just rotate. Like if you have like 2 core families and that are friends, and you each invite another family to come maybe once a month, you go out to dinner, or every other month you go out to dinner, but that just gives you an opportunity away from the synagogue to meet another family. And that's sort of what we were talking about on this slide. So now we're going to Dan.
So I'm Dan Schwartz, and we're going to talk about what actions can we take.
So one idea is to create an engagement working group in order to identify innovative strategies to reach out to members. So the idea here is to have some formal working group that's set up that can explore new innovative ways, and we'll have a few more suggestions on subsequent slides. I think the important thing is identifying member talents and individual desires to get involved and improve contact with these individuals. So I think about Julie the first time that she came out to visit our home and welcomed us to Temple Jeremiah. The long list of questions that we went through to identify interests, bring up the point of the gardening. I think Julie noticed that I had a large garden in the outside and invited me to participate in the gardening committee that was here. So that's a way to identify individual families' desires, what are their interests, and bring them closer into the Temple community. Help members understand what Temple Jeremiah has to offer, make sure that everyone is asked to get involved. So I think the important is the outreach to make sure that people know that they're welcome here and that there are opportunities for them to get involved. Okay? Jude.
So again, our ideas creating engagement and connection overlaps a little bit with integration, which is a good thing. And so some of the ideas are similar, but one thing that we were talking about was setting up a buddy system. So kind of like matching families, but assigning one person to a couple families. So that person would be their go-to person. And one nice thing about that, it benefits the new people. It would also benefit the go-to person because it kind of re-engages them. Because we all know when you get involved and you start, with membership and new people, you get a little rejuvenated. Because maybe you've been around for a while and done some of the same things. It's really nice to meet new people and get involved in that way. And like Marcia was saying, it's just nice for the families and for the buddy person to see familiar faces. We know the more people we know, the easier it is to come in. And the buddy person can match up the families also. And just creating a unique connection with the buddy and the family, someone to answer questions, because I think sometimes we take for granted that people know the things that we talk about, maybe what certain groups do or how certain processes are, something with the school, or like an acronym that we use that we've just gotten used to. That's hard for a new family coming in, and people tend to think they have dumb questions, maybe about Hebrew school or bar mitzvahs. So just always pointing out there's no dumb questions. They could always have that point person to contact to ask anything and everything. And then that's good for the point person to know also to bring back to the rest of the temple. And just the same thing like we were talking with the thank yous, because what people really want is to be seen and heard. And so this would be really individual attention and not that time consuming really for the point person buddy. It really just would involve being available and checking in. So really not a huge time commitment, so easy to hopefully get people involved. And at the same time, evaluating the level of engagement of the new families or new people, and maybe, thinking about ways to match them up with interests like the garden, just kind of evaluating that our own selves and trying to match them up to things that they may be interested in and people that they might be interested in. So if you have several families, and then with the buddy system, the buddies can coordinate also. Maybe have meetings every once in a while and talk about their families and who might be interested in meeting who. And then we identify that the buddy might need to change over time as family dynamics changes, ages of kids, empty nesters, and maybe switching people around, and depending on their own matching interests. And one idea that we came up with and know that other congregations in the area do for engagement is creating an opportunity for parent and child working together towards a common goal, and we were talking about Hebrew, because that way the kids aren't on their own doing their Hebrew with the parents. Maybe the child is learning the Hebrew and the parent is sitting there not engaged. And I know a lot of us probably didn't really learn how to speak Hebrew or write Hebrew, so that would be great, again, to engage the parents and to validate for the child that they're not in this alone, that what they're doing is important to us too. So engaging both child and parent that way can bring a whole new kind of involvement for the temple. So that was a couple ideas that we had for engagement. And
So 2 more things. One is a Havurah program. Hopefully everyone's aware that we have a Havurah program at Temple Jeremiah. My family was actually part of one. It didn't work in that we didn't have common interests. Our kids were of different age, so unfortunately it didn't, but we have a lot of friends with, that are in Havurah programs at other temples. Not to say that there aren't successful ones here, but it didn't work. So maybe there's some way to better match up families that participated in it. So that's one idea. Now the other idea, let me explain where this came from. Sitting around with some friends that belong to other temples in the area, and I work at Discover. And so the idea came up as we were paying the bill, wouldn't it be great to have some sort of reward system or cashback bonus system at Temple, right? So if you go to an activity, you get $1 or you know, there's some sort of credit that's developed and that you can apply it to the gift shop or you can apply it to your dues or make a donation. So some way to reward, we all like rewards, right? What's in your wallet? That's another company. But anyways, that's what we were thinking along those lines. So that's all we had. Thank you.
Good job, guys. Thank you. Okay. Oh, no, we didn't. I'm sorry. Group 3, yeah. Membership dues and financial stability. Tell us how to do it.
Can you get like a Temple Jeremiah, like reward card with a number on it?
And your pictures.
Yeah. Picture?
Yeah.
Awesome. Their picture.
Just so that nobody else uses your report.
Everybody raise your hand. Raise your hands. Get some energy flowing. That's what I do with my seniors. Come on, let's stand up a little bit. Let's get some energy going. That got me.
That's right after me. That's 3. I mean,
We were charged with looking at what our sort of our current due structure and what some possible alternative due structures are. And so we think it's important that the temple has gotten to a time that we start at least to think about what some other possibilities are. We've heard a lot about the need to keep families connected. And what we do know is that the number of affiliated Jews is declining. American Jews identify as cultural and not necessarily religious Jews, and you can be a cultural Jew without belonging to a synagogue. I suppose you could be a religious Jew, belong to a synagogue, and not be religious, but current due structures may be out of sync. We know, and we've heard about the financial hardship of a number of our families, and that younger families probably don't want this huge financial commitment. We've tried to address some of that with having a lower due structure here for younger families. But we know also that more people are leaving the synagogue by choice or as a result of aging and dying versus those joining, and that can result in a synagogue's demise.
I get the attitude pages. I want to say off the attitude piece is both from some research or articles we have, but also, frankly, from some personal observation, just going through life. Temple dues can be viewed by some as a country club membership instead of a temple membership. Dues can also be viewed as unwelcoming, a barrier to entry for some, and antithetical really to what a house of worship espouses: openness, welcome, open arms. Interfaith families, something that I know a lot of you deal with, I deal with that as well, can be difficult for the non-Jewish spouse to accept. It's not easy to be invoiced for faith, or a quote I've heard, it's expensive to be Jewish. Now certainly, you know, in churches, let's say, there are asks, that there are donations, but the big difference is it doesn't come in the mail in an envelope. It's, you know, maybe it's service or whatever, whereas in synagogues, for the most part, you know, it's a dues bill, it's an invoice. So that's something that I think in a lot of interfaith families can cause some strife, some questioning, and, you know, maybe makes the non-Jewish spouse feel a little funny. Kind of, what am I getting into? What is this all about? In areas like the North Shore, it's very easy to be an a la carte Jew. Families can go through life cycle events and not belong to a synagogue. You can hire a rabbi to do a wedding, to do other events. You can go to Hillel Northwestern for a high holiday service. And look, there are families that do this, and they don't feel the need to pay the dues to join a synagogue. And again, in areas like this, these opportunities to live an a la carte Jewish life exist. If you're in Topeka, Kansas, or other places where you're not as flushed with Jewish life, it's maybe not as easy, but you know, around here people do it. So in turn they may question, well, why belong? Why pay dues? And then certainly there are some Jews who view dues hypocritically, saying that the temple really just cares about me paying and they don't care about spiritual well-being and living a full Jewish life. So, you know, these are challenging things, but I think they're things that we have to think about as we look at a dues structure. I mean, look, we all know that synagogues need funds coming in to exist. I just think what this has really taught me is maybe there is a better way, a more innovative way, a way that's more welcoming. So, with that, I'll hand this over to...
So my job was to overwhelm you with data, stun you into silence. So this is information on the current dues structure, so we wanted to kind of educate on what's actually out there. And most of this information is actually in your binders, so if you did a very detailed read of your binder, you would have seen some of this, but we figured most of you didn't. What concerns me is this table is looking most inquisitively at what the dues are, so that concerns me a little bit, but never seen it before? It's one of your tables in the binder. But just to kind of explain what this is and then point out a couple things. So you see the different types of member categories running down the side there. And one of the things that immediately struck me was just how many member categories there are, right? You wouldn't think there were so many. So you can see, I won't go through all of them, but there's a wide variety of them that cater to the Jeremiah population, right? And the community. And as you look down at them, a lot of them make sense, right? There's traditional structures, there's dues for young families, for young individuals, and then there's some adjusted dues. So there's a wide variety of member categories that actually exist. And then you can see the actual number of households that belong in each of those categories and the percent, and then the actual revenue that comes in. And the other thing that struck me as being just interesting is 45% fall within the first group there, right? Kind of a traditional membership, if you will, which means 55% of the population or the community has some other arrangement. If you look down at the bottom, you see that over 30%, permanently adjusted or temporarily adjusted, over 30% of the community, that's a pretty significant number, have some type of significantly adjusted dues. And then if you look at the actual revenue that comes in, clearly there's more revenue coming in for kind of the traditional membership as opposed to the adjusted, as you'd expect. And if you add all that up, it's about 900 families and about 1.9 million or so. And then the actual budget is taking 95% of that, so there's kind of a contingency that's built in for any overages. Okay? So that's the first slide. And then there's one more. So the same member categories that you see there, and what this really gets at is how paid up is the community. I mean, that's really what this kind of answer is. And you see that the first column, the second column there, paid in full. This is the number of families within a category that are paid in full. And then the next four columns are what percentage or what numbers actually still owe for each member category. Now, obviously, there's a ton of detail here, but a couple things struck me here is that you have 50. If you look along the bottom of the 896 paid members, you have 52% that have basically paid all their dues, right? Which means you have nearly another 50% that haven't paid their dues. And if you look kind of over to the right, if you add the second and third column, all the way from the right-hand side, the 17% and the 15%, you've got over 30% of the people who haven't paid somewhere between 50 and 100% of their dues, right? So that's clearly it's a high percentage, and that's the model that exists with Jeremiah, and that's the financial model and the cash flow model obviously needs to be predicated on these dues coming in to some degree, in addition to other sourcing of funding, endowments and whatnot. Yeah.
Are those dues being paid on a schedule, or are there dues that are being paid?
It's a great question, actually. I don't know the answer. I don't know if anyone does.
So if you want to continue, I'll answer that afterwards. How's that sound?
Yeah. Okay.
Keep going.
That's a great question, though.
During the break.
Okay, so some of the dues information which we wanted to share. So again, it kind of reinforces some of the points that we've been making already. How attitudes are changing, and this is the reality of kind of what's happening today in Jeremiah. Now, before I guess I'll turn the mic over, we thought we were going first, so we were going to pass around a box and have everyone put money in. But I guess it's going to Sadaka, so that's probably a good thing, right? It'd be tacky if we passed a box right now. All right. Next. Okay. I don't think this one's mine, is this? Let's read the slide then. I think we have one team member who couldn't make it. Is this yours? Okay. Well, Corey, grab it.
So, it is, as I looked at the literature, that average cost across the country of maintaining a synagogue is about $2,400 per household, except for the largest congregations is about $2,700. So just to keep that into perspective as we start to keep going. So there are basically two different kinds of memberships that we wanted to present to you. One is a voluntary membership, where members are really considered as contributors or affiliated with the congregation, not necessarily members per se. They're contacted on an annual basis, personally, for an ask. Hopefully each contribution is higher than the year before. The amount that the person gives is confidential between themselves and the synagogue. And any contribution that they can give allows them to be affiliated with the synagogue. So there's no fixed amount. There's an amount that we would know as to what approximately the cost of membership is. But each person is asked to donate what they can contribute based on whatever they feel that they have available to them for any given year. Another way to look at it is called a fair share contribution, where affiliates are asked to contribute a percentage of their annual income, generally between 1.5% and 2.5% of their annual income. It very openly acknowledges that different affiliates will pay very different amounts. Not everybody in the congregation has the same annual income. The average amounts are not publicized, and it's really based on honesty. Nobody asks for a tax return. Nobody says you have to give this percentage. But it's, again, it's another way of sort of setting a target amount and asking people to contribute.
So we did some very sophisticated math, and we divided the number we divided the total dues amount by the number of members, the 1.9 million by the roughly 900 or so members. And if we had kind of this free will system and everyone paid, you know, kind of an even distribution, each member family would be paying, you know, close to $3,000. And you know, I think the point here is that I think we would all probably agree, if you just look at the variability of member categories that I was talking about before, this wouldn't be a sustainable model, right? There's clearly, you know, different categories of people that have different abilities to give, and you know, the free will, the fair share, kind of affiliate type of model that, you know, we started talking about, you know, could be a very good option for the synagogue.
So what makes this a successful endeavor is that you need strong benefactors who can help make up any deficits. So in a year in which your contributions do not help you make your budget, you need to have people that you can rely on. You need to be very clear identifying the cost of the synagogue to provide services for a member, either inclusive or a la carte, if that's what we decided to do. You have to have a lot of open, honest, and convincing communication. An increased endowment to help sustain the mission, so that gets back to having the endowment. And to potentially consider a hybrid model. So a set fee for some, perhaps there's a reduced fee for individuals who've been members for more than 20 years, and then asking them to supplement via a voluntary or a fair share. So it's again, it's another way of considering dues and thinking about our total membership or affiliates. The only local congregation that currently has changed their dues structure to fair share is Sukkot Shalom, which I think is based in Wilmette, correct? Okay.
They started out with
They started, okay. There is a congregation in Oak Park, I know, that has recently changed, but they're not necessarily local for us. A conservative synagogue in Tucson, just as an example, asked for donations for high holiday tickets instead of charging, and the result was higher revenue than had they charged for the same number of tickets. If you intend to change, it takes about a 2 to 3 year period to transition to a new model, and after an initial revenue loss, the congregations that have made change actually saw an increase in about 2 to 4% of revenues. There's some great resources, thanks to Danny for sharing the conservative journal with me. There's some really great information. There's a wonderful report from the Pew Commission on the status of Jewish America. If you haven't looked at it, I would encourage you to do that. And again, thanks to Danny. So we have a little bit more.
So in summary, we could look at our cohort experience as a template for how we might want to communicate to our congregants about dues. We have shared Devar Torah's historical learnings from presidents and board members, financial management, the business of Temple Jeremiah, and exposure to all the services provided here. So what we have experienced together serves as a template as to how we can present to our congregants due structure. Envision a menu, a drop-down menu if you're internet related, a menu that explains why you should pay your dues along with your annual dues request. So Torah, Deuteronomy 12. You shall set aside every year a 10th part of all your yield. Or Genesis 28. Jacob promises God a 10th of all that he possesses. Historical learnings. Imagine scrolling through stories of how Jews have paid for their temple membership throughout the ages. We could even provide an option for Jeremians to share their own stories. This would be similar to the stories that were shared in the gems for High Holidays. Under financial management, you'd be able to discover as much financial detail about running the temple as you specifically want. Some people want a lot of details, other people want just a few bullet points, but we would make that available. And a service menu for those that really want to know how much a particular project or program costs. We would give them an actual cost to the program. So we're creating an idea, a way to communicate to our congregants how much, why, and where their contributions are needed at the temple. Because we want our members to fully understand their dues responsibility, we make available a variety of reasons and resources. We deliver it deliberately and delicately with their chosen way. So some of us would want to learn about these reasons online. Others would want it hard copy. We would provide it to them the way they want. Also, some people want to talk. So we would provide it through conversations, dialogues with staff members or clergy, board members. Again, the idea is to help our congregants really understand what they're asked to pay for in a way that the congregant themselves want to learn about it. That's our story.
Okay, group 4, communications.
Do you want to answer the question, or? Sure, I could answer it. So I think the question, stop me if I'm wrong, was, are those people on payment plans? And the majority of them are on payment plans. As of last night, when we gave our board report about this, out of the almost 900 families, there are 7 families, only 7 families, who we haven't received any kind of financial commitment from. We know that there's some people who pay after tax season or something like that. So we record all this information. And compared to years prior, and we've been really diligent at tracking this, I think right now there's 40 families who have not paid anything towards commitment. Of that 40 families, the majority of them are paying down school, b'nai mitzvah, other costs. It's been double in years past. So we're really cracking down on how we do our collections. But
the ones that, let's say, have only paid 50%, is that because they pay every 3rd month, or?
Yes, they're on all different sorts of, it goes along with what Karen was just saying about we reach out to people and help them however they want to pay it. The question sometimes comes in, though, those people who don't want to communicate with us and don't want to pay, and that's one of the biggest challenges we encounter on the financial side here.
But I think the question is, were those numbers skewed because if I'm on the quarterly plan, was I counted as paid in full?
No, you wouldn't have been paid in full.
So I wouldn't be paid in full, even though you have my credit card and you charge, you still...
That's more of a cash flow model. That's what that's kind of explained, is how our cash is coming in.
It's a skewed number because people are on the quarterly plan.
We can talk about, I want to make sure that we have plenty of time because I think we're running a little late right now, so make sure we give them out. We can talk.
No, these have all been wonderful presentations, and I don't want to cut anyone off because they've been fabulous ideas. So we're going to, hopefully you'll all indulge us, and we're just going to run long because we still have about an hour's worth of other things to do. But this has been fabulous. I don't want to cut anyone off, so don't
Thank you.
feel rushed.
So it is late. I see the yawns, I see people getting up to stretch, and unfortunately, I'm not known for brevity. So there you have it. We'll do our best. My name is Matt Sands. I've had the pleasure of working on the communications team with Melissa and with Rob and with Patty and with Avi, who couldn't be with us tonight because of a work commitment. And I do mean a pleasure. We'll talk through the topic of communications and some of the learnings and discoveries, but I think even more important than that, at least for me, was the value of getting to know these folks. And we heard some of the previous groups talk about the value of connections and integration, and that's what happened with us through real lively discussions, flurries of emails, collaboration on the deck and the topic. We got to know each other, and that was of terrific value. So when we first began discussing the topic of communications, and this was right after session 4, we saw that there was a lot of energy around the topic. And we began what was really best described as a brainstorming session with lots of ideas, problems, opportunities, solutions, thoughts, and experiences being thrown up on the wall. And very quickly we came to the conclusion that what we needed to do was create a structure around what we were trying to accomplish to make sure that we could deliver on the expectations here tonight. And so, not atypical of a project management framework, we said first we're going to have to frame the issue. So, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? What's the opportunity? Next, we need to define the ideal. So if we know what the problem is, what are we trying to get to? What's the end state? And then let's collect data around how we can solve that. And we did some of that through benchmarking, best practices and processes, and we'll talk about who we talked to and how we collected that data. And then finally, we wanted to document some initial ideas. We'll call them thought starters, discussion starters, that are really not meant to be the end-all, be-all, but a beginning. We'll go to the next slide. In terms of framing the issue, we figured out that what we need to do first is really get an inventory of existing communication vehicles. We didn't have room on the slide to put everything, but we've got what we think are some of the significant communication vehicles that Temple uses today to communicate among the membership and the clergy and the lay leadership. And I won't go through all of them, but you can see that they really span the gamut, paper and digital and voice. There are push communications where they're pushed to members, either all members or select members. And there's pull communications, particularly in the website, where members go out and pull information that they're interested in. Once we had that inventory identified, we said we really need to begin collecting data and talking to stakeholders in the temple, about where the opportunities lie. And we identified 3, maybe 4 stakeholder groups. Members, clearly. Clergy, and I'll add to that because of the commonality of the response, the lay leadership, particularly at the board level, and then staff, and we're really talking about Danny Glassman and his competent team of folks that run the temple on a day-to-day basis. From a member perspective, you won't be surprised to know that members think we're doing all right. Communications are decent, they're adequate. And only when pressed further do we begin to uncover where some of the opportunities lie. Some members said, really too many emails or too much communication. It's difficult for me to find the information that I'm interested in, right? It's like a needle in a haystack. And on the other side, there were members who said, I didn't know about something, which is hard for us to believe given the quantity of communication, but I didn't know. If I knew about an event or I knew about an activity, I might have wanted to participate, or my spouse or my family might have wanted to participate. Clergy and lay leadership had a very interesting perspective on communication, and was really around how do we get the word out about everything great that's going on at Temple and in our community. And how do we increase engagement and participation among the membership, because that ultimately is the tie that binds us together as a community. And when we talked to staff, what we heard about was technology, new and exciting technology that we've recently acquired, technology that we have in place that may be underutilized. We heard about the time and the effort that it takes to update communications. So all of the paper communications, all of the electronic communications that we all receive, that all takes a significant amount of time. Most of the effort lies on the shoulders of Danny's staff. And then we heard about metrics, data, attendance goals? How do we measure the effectiveness of our communications and the effectiveness of the programs? So as we thought about all of this stakeholder feedback, what we came to realize is we needed a little bit of a paradigm shift from where we started. We began by thinking, how do we improve communications? And where we ended was really a question of how do we become more effective at using communication as an element to achieve the broader temple objectives of increasing participation and engagement. And so to talk about how we then identified the ideal, I'll pass it over to Rob.
Thank you, Matt. First of all, I want to compliment Matt on his use of microphone presence. Held up beautifully, spoke over the microphone as a producer, very nicely done. So, you know, in any community organization where you have a broad demographic of people, the way you communicate, you're never going to please everybody all the time. There are some people who prefer phone calls. There are some younger members who prefer only electronic communication. There may be some older members who only want to go to the mailbox to get their information from the temple. So this is not just endemic of our congregation, it's endemic, I think, of all congregations. But what we really wanted to focus on was how we do it. So it's actually not just how we communicate, it is how we engage our members. So we'd like to make sure we provide consistent, personalized, and targeted communication. And I think the targeted communication is very important because there are some people who they want to receive their communication in very specific ways, and if you give it to them in another way, they're not going to engage. So I think that's a really crucial thing. And through vehicles preferred by our members, there's a way of asking people how they prefer to be communicated with. I think that really helps us also in identifying certain people. So if there's a way on a form or something like that where we ask them how you want to be, how do you want to receive our communication from our temple, I think that's an effective tool. And we also want to talk about inclusiveness and engagement. I think we've all talked about that in various other committees. And we want to communicate in a manner consistent with our values. We don't want to hammer anybody over the head. We don't want to over-communicate with people. But there's a way to do it, and that's how we like to do that. So how do others achieve this objective? You know, in talking to Danny and talking to a lot of other people in various other congregations, we pretty much fall in the middle about how we communicate with people as far as electronic communications and postal communications. So we all face the same challenges. We saw this online, and a lot of people say I get 5 to 10 emails a week from my temple. I delete them all. Don't tell them. I get weekly emails from sisterhoods about deaths and so on, and on Shabbat. That sounds about what we get. I don't read most of them, so I'm not sure. So, you know, it's a classic Jewish response. I had a great chat with Danny several weeks ago, and in our conversation we talked about how all the same synagogues, like I said, have the same challenge on how to communicate with members, but we also need a systemic plan on how to reduce paper costs over the next few years. It is a gigantic number on the budget line, and we're not saying we should become a paperless temple by any stretch of the imagination, but reducing those costs, I think, is a goal that we should really take seriously. As Danny said, the one synagogue in the area uses an online membership form to solicit interest, and the members are added to an online database for committees through Salesforce software. We thought that was a great idea in that you can automatically use that software in that form to put people in various committees that they're interested in and communicate with them specifically through those ways. Okay, that's Melissa.
Yeah, so I'm speaking. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So the beauty of being on communications is that our strategies are not nearly as risky as with the dues team. So, given that we have 900 members, we can very easily pilot some of these ideas and, at the end of the day, figure out what works best. I think our ideas pretty much fall into 3 buckets. One is organizational. Let's rejuvenate the communications committee, but instead of being a standalone committee, let's recognize the fact that communication really is a means to engagement, and perhaps fold that underneath some other committees that might already exist, as a means to further their goals. And then the second 2 are really, if you think about low touch versus high touch. So the low-touch communications are communications that are going out via email or mass mailings that don't really require a lot of individual effort. But we can think about optimizing those through using software and allowing people to receive personalized communication. But really, from the Temple's perspective, it's pretty low touch. It's pretty low effort. And the Temple has collected that information from either what events folks have attended or preferences that folks have filled out. I should also mention, just in some of the other presentations, I also noticed that spirituality didn't come up as often. I think that, folks talked about getting to know people and feeling engaged and feeling as if we had a community, but specifically the notion of spirituality only came up, I think, in one of the presentations, and I think that's also an element in communications that I think we can focus on. And, I was one who actually reached out to folks about communications in different parts of the country, and I did find it fascinating that even my friends that were the most religious and the most committed to attending Shabbat services really felt that they had no idea what the difference was between a Shabbat communication and a message that was really coming from clergy, and an email about, can you all come to, bring canned goods to the canned goods drive. And I think that's a really important point to think about, with this low touch piece, can we somehow segment those messages and allow people to really identify, well, what is it that, what's the benefit here of this communication? And then with the high touch piece, our ideas are similar to the other groups, but of course better. And so, I am in a Havarad group, and I think it has been pretty successful. We're only in the first couple of weeks, but this notion of, from a communication standpoint, the high-touch communication of picking up the phone and calling somebody, or knowing somebody that might be interested in a particular event or service that's occurring at the Temple is fantastic, but it's very high touch. So how do we think about making that scalable? And some of the ideas that we tossed around are not dissimilar to others. Havarad groups, or thinking of cohort-based communication where all of the members are put into a cohort. They, presumably have similar preferences and want to attend similar events. And so maybe 3 times a year, each cohort is getting phone calls about those events. And other strategies that, of course, we can try out in a pretty low-risk way. And I think you'll see a couple more specific ideas here. Room parents sort of falls into that last bucket of high touch. The low touch piece, the religious and the Hebrew school emails, and those to me are the most hilarious and fascinating, because as a mom, I get 3 of those a week, and I've learned things from what people did on vacation to what might have happened in school, or they're just very different across the board, and so some standardization there I think could benefit. But we felt that these ideas would be helpful to pass on to the next group. So that's it. I think that's our conclusion. Yep. Wonderful.
Our last group of youth engagement.
We're fast. We're quick. We're the youth. We're young.
Sure, it's actually. You have it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Time's up.
Okay, any questions?
Well, we have it in multiple forms.
Okay, so youth engagement was our topic. And we actually decided to approach youth engagement from a rather broad perspective. Rather than zooming in on just youth groups as youth engagement, we wanted to take a look at how do we at Temple Jeremiah engage youth across the board. And so Michael, Tammy, Howard, and he couldn't be here tonight, myself and Amy worked on this together. You can go forward. So we all agreed that engaging children and teens helps them to build a lifelong commitment to Judaism and the temple, and it goes to many of the presentations that have been here tonight. They are, you know, especially when you say families stop engaging at the end of a certain milestone in their youth's lives, this becomes more critical and more important. So we're going to take you through these 4 pieces of information tonight. Michael's going to talk briefly about how we engage our younger members, and there's actually a huge and broad list of ways that younger members can be engaged here at Temple Jeremiah, so we wanted to start there. And then he's also going to share some resources that we already have in place and some demographics from the school that we were able to get from Sheila. We weren't able to get demographics on participation in youth group events as much, but we were able to get some numbers to share with you about the school. And then Tammy and Amy are going to take you through some feedback that we got, because as we looked at this, we said, well, maybe we should ask some people about how this is going here at Temple. So we went and spoke with all of our clergy, and we also spoke with one of our teachers, and we spoke with some of the staff about how youth are being engaged here. And so we have some feedback from them to share with you, and then we have some possible next steps that came out of those conversations. But know that a part of what we think is the next steps is that we need to talk to some more people, like the youth themselves and their families. But we didn't have time, obviously, to get to all of that. So I will pass it on to Michael.
Hello. So how do we engage our younger members? Similar to communication, a plethora of ways. You know, the social programming that you see up there, you know, starting at the very beginning, you know, with Babies and Bagels, through Jeremiah Buddies and so forth and so on, through the various, you know, programming at the temple. Everything kind of works in, I don't want to say a connected way, but to some extent a way that reaches out to everybody across many different segments of our youth to attempt to bring them in. And then obviously everything centers around the educational programming, because that's why our kids are here. Next slide. This is a little bit more specific as the demographics, and you can see, you know, the resources that are available to support our youth are also quite expansive, starting with the clergy, you know, all the way down through the things that you see. With regard to the demographics, you'll notice specifically where we have our biggest challenges. And it's not surprising based on the life cycle of our children and what happens in their lives as they grow older and get more involved in different things, you know, especially post-junior high. We got a huge drop-off in involvement. And that's really the critical area that we all talked about before, you know, as far as what happens to our kids as they're competing, you know, as we're competing here for their time with everything else that they're involved in their lives. And, you know, starting after, you know, bar bat mitzvah, going into high school, we see that huge drop, and specifically, as you hit the latter parts of their high school careers, we're down at 8%, which is a big problem. And surprisingly, on the college level, we're bringing some of these kids back because of all the different things that we're doing to reach out to them. At the percentage enrolled at 53%.
That's kids who are enrolled with the college boxes, like families who have enrolled their kids to receive communications from the town.
What they're actually doing with that stuff?
That's what they're enrolled. Right.
That's what they're enrolled, exactly. But at least they're enrolled.
I'm surprised to see the enrollment drop off. Actually, it looks like before bar abundance.
Well, you've got 6th through 8th grade is 76%, and then it goes down to 38%.
We started at 92, from 3 to 50,
but it was at 92%.
The 8th grade, still listening to their parents. 8th grade.
Right.
Well, 7th grade is, I mean, depending on the, where your kids' deadlines are, but 7th grade is traditionally bar bat mitzvah.
We're not continuing on to do bar bat mitzvah.
Why do you have the 8th graders?
Yeah.
The 8th
Right, you
graders
have all
are
8th
post.
graders possibly who are, or many of the 8th graders in that group, because it's a community.
So we collected some feedback from our clergy and staff and asked all of them, what are we doing well? We have, the feedback we received was we're doing well at fostering relationships. We have a very strong education program, including Madrachim, which I think bring a lot of energy to the younger kids, and the B'nai Mitzvah program. The education program at Temple Jeremiah really, I think, brings a love of learning and a love of Judaism to our youth. We have a breadth of programming that is really strong. We have offerings for babies to teens. We have the 3, 4, 5 youth programs that are well attended. In fact, my daughter actually just went to the Nickel City program on Sunday and had a great time. And we have leadership who really cares and connects with our youth. I think one great thing that has been started with our youth is the prayer incentive, where the kids are asked to come to the office and chant prayers and read for the cantor and the rabbi and Dr. Litsky, and it really helps to build a personal connection to the administration, between the youth and administration. What are the challenges? Competing for time. That's really a common theme and a common response that we received. Lots of competing priorities. We live on the North Shore. There's too much homework, tons of extracurricular activities. And it goes along with also engaging parents. I think parents are also, because their kids are very busy, parents are very busy, and it's a kind of a vicious cycle, I guess. But I think if we can engage the parents, they can really serve as role models for their children, and that really brings it, the helping youth to see the value of engaging in temple life, I think really comes from parents, and making it sort of part of a child's core values and a part of their foundation for growing up. Geographic diversity is also a big challenge. I think what's great about our temple is that there's, people from all over, but it also creates a challenge, because it creates a challenge in, getting the youth to build relationships with each other, youth who don't necessarily go to the same secular school. So, and then, temple engagement viewed as transactional or not cool in the youth's minds. Transactional in that, there are families who pay dues so that their kids can become a bar bat mitzvah, and then they exit. But again, I think it really is a matter of educating our youth on the importance of getting involved in temple, not just belonging to a temple, but but being actively involved in Temple and, you know, having parents who take the time to come in and get involved and not just do a drop-off. I think when the kids see their parents involved, it really makes a big difference. So
we also asked in our conversations, because now we talked about things that are going well and things that are challenges, what else do you think we could do, or what could we do differently? And what we consistently heard back was bringing on full-time staff. That the individuals that work with the youth are phenomenal, but there's more that we could do. And by having someone who's fully dedicated to working with them, that they thought we could make more of a difference. They also felt that by increasing the collaboration between the staff and also the youth staff, that there's more that we could do to help make sure that we are connecting all the dots between the kids that are coming in for school and the kids that are going to activities to make sure that we're integrating them. We also think that there could be more social action opportunities for adolescents. Not that there aren't opportunities today, but another way to bring them in. They also talked about engaging parents more. We also, as a group, talked about more family programming on Sundays, that many of us are dropping off our kids for Sunday school, and what is it that's going to get us to stay to become more involved, and then get us involved with our children to help ingrain it. And then additionally, we talked about events to brewing. The other thing that came up in many of our conversations was that engaging our youth is important because it benefits our youth, our families, our temple, and our largest Jewish community. And so once we talked through with everyone, and everyone was super engaged, I think all of us would agree that our conversations were wonderful and we appreciate the time they gave us. So we talked about the good, we talked about the change, and it was like, well, where do we go from here? What's the next step? And so for next steps, it's where do we go from here? How do we make that difference? Because we felt like we were challenged with kind of identifying what were the issues, what went well, what could we do differently. So for next steps, we thought that we need to gather more information. We talked to the clergy, we talked to the staff. We didn't really talk to parents other than ourselves. We felt we also should talk to the youth and other congregants, and then put the information together and then bring it to the board. You know, is a full-time staff something that we think should be in the budget? Are there other activities we can do which wouldn't impact the budget, but that we think might have a stickiness factor to them that could help the group? And that's kind of where we ended up. So thank you.
Okay, we're going to jump right into, first of all, those are all awesome. Awesome ideas, awesome presentations, and I'm just kind of blown away by the research and thought and communications you guys put into this. So I hope you all enjoyed them as much as I did. And I think for sure we are going to be able to share this at the board level, and they'll be wowed as well. Okay, so we're going to jump right into our next thing. I know this group wanted to tell you that Tzedakah, we raised how much?
$126.07.
So thank you.
$126.07.
Wow. So thank you all for participating in that. So we're going to do some, just some one-on-one quick check-ins with you. I'm going to ask you to get up and sit at the tables that I assign you so that we don't interrupt the program that much. Adam is going to be talking and singing and doing something with you. I'm not sure what he would tell me. But anyway, so at this table, if I can have I think it was fabulous, and I'm really appreciative of the one-on-one time and the presentations. You will be getting a survey tomorrow morning, monkey survey or whatever that is, about the program. We would really appreciate your feedback, and I hope everyone will fill it out. I'm also interested in people, if you've would like to share your experience about being in the cohort. Leah's looking for people to write a few sentences or a line about your experience for the covenant for future issues. So we're going to try and put a couple people a month in to talk about it, to start to build some interest and excitement of other people to participate next year when we do this again. So if you would like to participate in that, I would much appreciate it and encourage it. There is the dinner on April 24th. It is free to all of you in the cohort. We are asking a minimal charge for any family members you bring. You'll be getting an invitation in the mail. And I really hope that you all come and bring your families. It's a whole big Shabbat experience that weekend, right? As well as your anniversary and some other things, right? We're doing a big extravaganza. So April 24th, mark your calendars. I want to thank Mitch and Diane for helping me put all of this together. Did you have anything else, words of wisdom?
No, just a comment to Diana, as well as to Julie, that we couldn't have been any more pleased than the results of what took place, particularly what we heard this evening. It went beyond our wildest expectations of how each of the groups got up and addressed issues that we've been coping with, certainly since Diana's been president and moving forward. Just an excellent job, thank you.
And worship at 8 o'clock, disabilities awareness, and Shabbat, and just a great opportunity to be together. And Purim coming up next week. Wednesday evening, there's a Mad Lib Purim, and if you want to know more about that, come on Wednesday night, 7 o'clock. And then on Sunday, of course, we have, or Saturday evening, excuse me, we have the Shushan Speakeasy that is adults only. And then on Sunday morning, we have the Shushan Shuffle, which unfortunately this year I will not be running. And then we are opening up our carnival early to families who have a member with a disability who would like to come in a less chaotic time. That's at 10 o'clock. And then at 11 o'clock, we have the Purim Spiel. This is a frozen Purim is the theme. And then the carnival and lunch will follow. Lots of good stuff. You should receive a flyer either in the mail or in your email, or you saw a poster, or you saw it on the digital, or you read about it in the covenant, or somebody told you about it just now, or...
I will tell you, if you've not been to the adult Purim party, you are missing something. It's a very fun time. I don't want to spoil it.
And just a little teaser, Kentorimi will be here sharing some of the bawdier Purim music that you never heard as a kid.
Because Adam would just blush.
I don't want to ruin the image. The mirror image.
Lisa?
I'm going to skip ahead to a different holiday, but the Women's Seder is March 18th. So I know if it hasn't been to it, it's really a wonderful event. So put it on your calendar.
So thank you, and it's been wonderful.